I have to find attribution for this. Is one of my friends told me, and he's a wise man, but I don't think he made it up. But just the idea of like, if you want to know about one man or one woman, you read nonfiction. If you want to know about all women, all men, you read fiction, right?
Sure.
And yeah,
Sure.
so this idea that you don't give anyone a name, really. I mean, most of the main characters, you don't give them names. Just works so well, and I just feel like with the hyperbole of the book, with the like she literally becomes a dog or close to it, like so much is accomplished there that couldn't have been done with nonfiction. Um, there's all kinds of themes of like obviously before and after, you know, pardon the initials, but BM, before motherhood, and AM, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. The sadness that she goes through, the longing, obviously body image. I mean, the body is torn up in some ways, but just the singular focus on your kids. This is a day where, I think my son asked for his lunch, I think 7 times within about 3 minutes. Right. And so in the book, one of the plot devices is that the husband he's pretty much gone all week. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so while she's not a single mom, she might as well be from Monday to Friday.
Right.
And that singular focus. What, I guess the interplay between that singular focus, which is, you love your kids so much, it hurts, you cannot even describe it, to it's a lot of work. It makes you feral. It makes you, go crazy. Especially when you don't have an outlet, like as Nightbitch didn't really.
Yeah.
Just, I guess that interplay between that singular focus as a great thing and that singular focus as just taxing.
Right. And how that singular focus and the sort of self-sacrifice, right, of the stay-at-home parent is really lauded and affirmed in our culture, to a degree where I think it can make it difficult for parents to feel like they are entitled to space and time away from their children, right? That it almost seems like that's one of the kind of most taboo things you can claim for yourself. And to me, it felt that way too, that my being home with my child didn't fulfill all my needs. And actually having some time away from him every day was it precisely what I needed. Yeah. And so I think it's really grappling with that dilemma that a lot of parents feel.
Yeah, it makes you think of like like if there's a stay-at-home dad, or just, dad's doing something that maybe moms stereotypically do. Everyone's just, oh, what a great dad. What a great dad. Oftentimes it's doing the bare minimum.
Right.
Right. And like you said, just an expectation of the women, right? Like just it's assumed. Do you feel like it's lip service, the whole idea, like you talk about, of just like, oh man, you're doing a great thing, good for you? Do you feel like that's like cheapening or minimizing?
Wait, when people say that about what?
About the mother, like,
Like
how good, I guess, like how lucky, how great of a thing it is that you're able to stay home.
I mean, I think it is a good, like, I think it is great to be able to stay. I mean, it's like a privilege to be able to stay home. But I think once you have a kid, you don't stop being the you were before you had the kid, right? So obviously it's a huge transformation of your life. And so then it's all about trying to figure out, okay, how do I step into this new role that's all encompassing, and like I love it and it's very important and I want to be with my child, while at the same time not completely losing myself to this, right? It to such an extent that I start to turn into a dog, become feral, right? Like, because I don't know how to express what I need, and I don't even know what I need. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's complicated. I think, like I loved being at home, and then at a certain point I was like, something needs to change and I don't know what it is. And then like figuring my way through that. and also working against all of the messages you get that like, wow, it's really selfish that you need this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The, obviously like a lot of how we've been raised is how we raise our kids or don't raise our kids. We want to do the opposite of, and so, so the protagonist, she's in many ways is running away from her parents. She talks about they're miles away, if not thousands of miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I love how you put it towards the end of the book, not like at the end, but maybe the last 3/4 or the last 1/4 of the book or so is about her mom. So Nightbitch's mom was was an incredible singer. She wanted to do opera. She wanted to go to Europe. And there's this scene that I will remember for a long time where, it's a flashback where she was remembering, she was singing, she was remembering. And it was basically like little did I know. She just kind of like blurts out with that. And the protagonist, who was a kid at the time, was like, what? No, what? No, what? Like, no, she wanted to know more. And it was just like this little break in the mom's real patrician or whatever kind of, right, like armor, where it was like her let herself go a little bit. The Nightbitch was an incredible artist. She said, oh, she kind of downplays. I didn't get a lot of, articles, this and that, but she loved art and she was very good at it. So I just wonder too about like career and maybe some guilt that's forced upon women if they try to do some sort of something self-fulfilling like art, which is also happens to be a career.
Yeah. I mean, wow, there's so much in there.
Right.
I mean, the first thing that also resonates with me is the mother's inability to articulate the, like the deep true things to her daughter, and her daughter's like deep thirst for that, like just like wanting it so badly. That
I'm sorry to interrupt you on that. Do you feel like the mom was like felt like she was saving her daughter the pain, or she just truly didn't know how to articulate it, wasn't used to articulating it?
I just don't, I think probably for her to say it coming out of the tradition she was in,
Okay.
because she's rendered as Mennonite
Right.
in the book, would be really taboo and really uncomfortable for her to say. And I do think Nightbitch interprets her mother telling her to go and be the best at everything and like get out as sort of like her, I think it was her mother's best love to like push her away and make her like go out into the world. And she always thought her mother was so distant when really her mother was saying like, get out of here. So yeah, the whole dynamic and the things discovered in the mother-daughter relationship in this book were really discovered. Like when I would get to them, I'd be like, oh, like that feels right, and her, wishing she could sort of save her mother, wishing she could go back and tell her mother, like you should do this, like save yourself, do what you want to do. Yeah. So I don't know what the rest of your question was. I just like, I don't
either.
On the mother-daughter thing.
I was rambling a little bit, but what you're talking about with the, like, go back and save yourself, or go back, I want to save you, mom, back in those, it makes me think of like, okay, so the husband, literally it's written at parts in the book, like, and maybe she's trying to justify it herself, but she's like, he's not a bad guy. He's not mean. He's not, he's not violent in any way with his words or anything. But like, so I guess I'm wondering, like, you want to have someone to blame. You want to have someone to blame for her mother, not being able to chase her ambition. You want to blame the husband, but in some ways you can, but in some ways it's hard. Like, is this just like the quote unquote, like society is just like, because later in the book, when she does, she definitely takes advantage of her, like her personhood. And she's just like, hey, I'm going to do this. And he tells him what to do. And he's like, all right. Is it just about not feeling that you can say these things as a woman, as a mother?
Yeah. I think it's a mix of things, because if you think about someone who grew up Mennonite, it's sort of like taking all of the messages people might get about men and women and marriage and, like roles. And if you grow up Mennonite, you're getting sort of like the most extreme,
right,
of those. So that's what's in her background. And then that then she's coming into like contemporary society. So it's sort of like she's playing those messages out that are really like even louder for her than for anyone else. Those are the things that are kind of being played with then in this ongoing story with her husband. And I think I mean, there is a part I think where she's like, she wanted to like rage at like society and you know, like these ideas, like what do you do when you find yourself inside these systems,
right?
And it really feels like they're to blame for you feeling stuck. But what do you do? Like you're inside this is like how society works. Like things are set up in a certain way. So do you become like a politician and like try to change society? You know, like what do you do? And I think there are points in the book where she's kind of like, what do I do if I feel stuck inside this? And I think ultimately where she arrives is she's like, it starts at home, and it starts like with me taking for my experience and for my own happiness.
Right.
You know, and for me saying, this is what I need. This is what I need to, you know, to my husband, even though like she grew up in a household where like her mom never said what she needed. So it is really also about kind of like healing generational trauma, or doing it differently than your parents did it.
Right.
Yeah.
As written in the book, there's no analog for the term bitch for men. Right. Nothing hits so hard. Nothing is, you know, so upsetting. Right. Which I don't bring up other than to say it's very interesting, and, you know, ideas of, you know, double hypocrisy and double standards and such. The mommy groups are so exciting, so interesting. You know, go to the library.
You thought so. I'm interested to hear what you think.
Well, so there's the big blonde, capital T, capital B, capital B, and this was Jen. There's a great scene where they go to kind of like the Tupperware party or the herbal party, the supplements, and there's like what 3 or 4 named Jen.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jens.
This Jen, that Jen, but such a paragraph or so that made me go, whoa. They're in the library, they're doing, you know, the play with the trains, go to story time, all that stuff. And there was just something about like the stare, where just like that stare of like, get me out of here, / what am I doing here, / where am I? Right. Just something kind of esoteric, something out there that she sees in the others, at Jen at times, right? You know, she's looking for like, we're the same, right? And literally like thinking at times, like, are these the dogs that I saw earlier? Right. Try not to give away too much. But there's also, I guess, maybe it's partly positive, this idea of like motherhood and passing down. You talked about passing down trauma, but also just like the idea of like passing down wisdom. I'm interested in Nightbitch, her grandma. It's like you would think, okay, naturally, like if mom was repressed and, you know, and oppressed, you would think, okay, she going back in time, she would be more so. But it seems like grandma was like the free spirit.
Yeah, right. Like grandma was the artist of the fam. Grandma
skipped a generation, I guess.
Yeah, she was the mystic. She was the iconoclast who was practicing her folk medicine.
Right.
Maybe everyone thought was a little weird. And of course, Nightbitch really connected with her, right? Because like her grandma got her. And her mom didn't really, you know, didn't want that. She's like, you know, be right. Yeah, be sensible. But Nightbitch never longed for a sensible life. And I think that's the problem. And her grandma didn't either, and acknowledged that.
A quick stylistic question, like the be sensible, and there are a lot of lines that are italicized. Right. They sound like they would come out of like a pamphlet or something like that. And I thought it was so interesting because, you know, they're kind of like this isn't the exact line, you know, but, you know, do your best and put your best foot forward, you know, those kind of things, but just sounded so realistic. What was the choice on that to italicize, or where did those come from?
I had a long conversation with the line editor, the copy editor about this. And I didn't have a great answer, but a lot of those would be, you know, how when you're talking, well, what you're saying is like a bit of is something that has been given to you, words that have been given you. They're not words that have originated out of you.
Sure.
And I feel like so many things have been like given to me by my parents, by the church, by whatever. So whenever I kind of got to a moment like that, I was like, this is like the thing that you get told. This is the thing that's embedded itself in the brain.
That makes
And it
sense.
gets italicized then because it's the thing you need to like get out. And so it was an acknowledgement of sort of like these voices that and messages that
Cool. The
we're
voices,
given.
that makes sense. There's the Field Guide, which is a book she finds, I think, at the library, right? And it's, for her, it's like a religion of sorts. It's by this Wanda White, who we talked about a few times, and it's you describe it in the book as like almost like a journal, because she eventually gets Wanda White's email, right? That's maybe old, maybe defunct, and it's like a journal for her. It's like a supplication for her, right? But she reads these stories of these possibly real, kind of like folklore slash, these matriarchal groups, these matriarchal societies. And for her, Wanda White becomes her like a guru of sorts, right? And she just really loves to read about them. There's the werewomen. Is that right? Like werewolf, werewomen.
Yeah.
Who is Wanda White for Nightbitch?
I mean, I think you said it beautifully. I think you put it beautifully. She does be, like her messages to Wanda. I think at some point she says in one of them, well, this is almost like prayer, writing to you every day. And Nightbitch doesn't pray anymore. She doesn't go to church, but she's sort of found someone who never writes back, who she doesn't know who they are, if they're real, and is just sending these messages out into the ether to her. And I don't know, it felt right in terms of having a sort of, that part of the book sort of, I think, harkens back to like the grandmother. It harkens back to like the prayer of her youth in a Mennonite church. You also just really see her longing for for connection with a woman,
Definitely.
a wise woman who knows something. And that's really her getting in touch with that, getting in touch with the fact that she needs to connect with other women. And I think that that's part of the process then of her coming into community, unlikely community with the mommy group.
Right. So, she throws $600, down the tubes, right? But she's just like, for her, it's just like, she tells her husband, it's like, it's just kind of, part of the experience. She's like, she like takes like an ironic distance, right? She goes to this party and she's like, I'm not really one of them.
Always an ironic distance, right?
Oh yeah.
Can't be vulnerable. Yeah.
Of course. Right. What are these? Are these real supplements? Are these, these just things to fool themselves? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I think they're real supplements. You'd have to ask Jen. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an MLM for women to have community, to come together, which they desperately want. But it's, probably around products that are somewhat counterfeit and
somewhat
making money, not, losing money, making money for people up the pyramid. And so I had listened to a podcast called The Secret as I was writing this book, which is all about MLM. And I don't know if I was like out to get MLMs in writing this, but it just seems like maybe there's a better way for us to come together in supportive circles that doesn't involve buying things that aren't legit, and getting other people to come join us and the kind of strong arming people into the circle. Yeah, but then it was also really fun to be like, a room full of like moms stoned on herbs, like crafting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're dancing around it very well, like a lawyer. You're saying, somewhat counterfeit. Maybe there's a better way. Art and performance are definitely themes I mean, there's the literal performance toward at the end of the book, which I'm not going to talk about, which is just on its own is just an incredible scene. But just the figurative performance, as a mom, looking the part, whatever that means, if that means looking disheveled, if that means looking put together, physically, mentally, the power of silence, the things you don't say, the power of using your voice, when she is screaming at night, for example, gets her husband's attention. There's one incredible scene where she just gives in to the canine urges, and she and her son, and they're just chasing each other around. She's chasing them around the playground, like, not like mom and son or father and son play, but like really like getting into it, right? Even so much that the son he starts sleeping in a kennel, right? Performance. And then, like I said, the last scene is that incredible performance, which is so cool to me because there's like, you have critics writing about that performance within this book. It's just like meta, like so many layers, right? I wonder about like the idea of like performing as a mom, like acting the part.
Yeah, again, so well, I mean, thank you for bringing this up. To me, this is the most interesting part of the book. The theme of performance and performative motherhood. And also I was really interested in the line between art and life, and because it was my thought sort of that all of the stuff leading up to her kind of formal stage performance at the end was all like part of her art, and she didn't know it. She was trying to find a way back to her art. And all of this dog stuff, which she just kind of freely gave into, eventually she's like, oh, this is the art. Like, this is what I've been doing through living sort of passionately and openly and seekingly. I've sort of arrived at what I've been looking for in art. And then of course there's resonances with that when you think about performance and motherhood, which I think was very much top of mind when you bring in these sort of the performative mommies who are sort of performing perfect motherhood. And like, why, what, who does that serve? And why do we think we have to do that? I just kind of wanted, all of those questions to sort of be raised through those different storylines.
I assume you're talking about like the performative is like both online and off, like a lot of like Instagram posts and that kind of stuff, right? Or maybe even mommy influencers.
Sure. Yeah. I have not gotten deep into like Instagram mommy stuff. It just has never appealed to me. But like, why do we need to make motherhood look like sunny and clean and happy and like well rested? It's just like, who's benefiting from those images,
right?
And what is it sustaining? What sort of like institutions is it reinforcing? If I were in college, I would write that paper, that critical analysis paper.
Not too late. Yeah. to kind of end up with, there's obviously the mother-son bond. There's, like I said, you do so well with like, it does not come off didactic at all, where it's like it's like a paragraph or two that is almost like written in a more nonfiction way, like out of a manual, but like not in the negative sense. Like, but towards the end, it's on page 237 if you have the book, this paragraph about like this idea of like the son, literally, changing her body, tearing up her body, being like the victim and the victimizer. Right. Or I should say, I don't even know if the son would be the victim, but he's the victimizer, right? The one you love the most as a mother, the one you would, again, do anything for, but he's your victimizer. He takes away your youth, your free time, your independence, right? Just the constant taking. Some of the scenes where you describe just like an average day with them. Yeah. He doesn't want to use the potty to go poo. He, this and that. And it's just like constant taking and taking and taking. And like you said, how can you, as any parent, how can you like come out looking like, hair grade and this, and I mean, you got, I have 9 different things, different juices, stains on my shirt by the end of the day,
Right.
dirt and all that. The son doesn't have a name, but he's obviously a huge character. I guess, what are you saying about the mother-son bond that's not like cheesy and like, you know what, you do love him though, but you have so many important things to say, and you can say it in better words than I can, maybe, just about that bond and who that son is to the mom.
Yeah, I think what we feel really comfortable saying as mothers and have been taught to be comfortable saying is like, you've been nothing but joy and light in my life. I couldn't imagine my life without you, which is true, like these things
Yes.
are true.
Yes.
I'm so glad I had you. Like, all of those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
And this completely changed my life. I'm not who I was before.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard and continues to be really hard to figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to be this new person. I guess I'm just, why are we not allowed to say those things? Like, why are we not allowed to be honest about how parenthood is amazing
Mm-hmm.
and fulfilling, and also like destructive? I mean, it is the destruction of a former life and a former self. And like really hard. And it's like this constant process of transition, and learning and becoming. I mean, someone asked me a question about like, what are you going to say to your son when your son reads the book, or how do you feel about your son reading the book? And I was like, I'm a little scared, obviously, but I also would hope the kind of relationship I want to have with my son is where he can ask me anything and I can tell him the truth, and we can have an open and honest relationship, and where he knows that I love him intensely and deeply and eternally. And, it was also really hard to become a mom. And I think both of those things can be true. And it's like sort of a relief to have the truth out in the open.
Right.
And that's like the feedback I've been getting from a lot of women. I think they're just like, thank you for putting like the truth out in the open, because it's been so hard to say it.
Just tell them to go look up the word fiction in the dictionary, right? It's fiction. It's fiction.
It's all made up, so it's a lot easier. Yeah, the only way you can tell the truth is in fiction.
I won't do it the same justice, but if I can just read a little bit of that paragraph that's so good. It's on 237. This thing comes from us, she would explain in interviews. It rips its way out of us, literally tears us in a wash of great pain and blood and shit and piss. If the child does not enter into the world this way, then it is cut from us with a knife. The child is removed and our organs are taken out as well before being sewn back inside. It is perhaps the most violent experience a human can have aside from death itself. To repeat that sentence, it is perhaps the most violent experience a human can have aside from death itself. And this performance is meant to underscore the brutality and power and darkness of motherhood. For modern motherhood has been neutered and sanitized. If I could snap, I would. In agreement. I literally cannot snap, but I mean, like I said, beautifully said. And again, it's like, that was Nightbitch in an interview. There's so many like layers there, levels where it's you writing it, but it's like, suppose it comes from a newspaper article or that kind of thing. So
yeah.
Long story short, what an art installation yourself that this book is. Just so many layers, so many levels, stories within stories. I think included is like a list of questions for book clubs, and I can imagine book clubs just making months and months of discussion out of this book, right? Have you been able to drop in on any book clubs for Nightbitch?
I have, and it's so fun, and such an honor to just hear what people think. I mean, they want to ask me questions, but I'm like, can I ask you guys some questions? Yeah, it's been really fun.
Besides the excitement of the movie, the future movie, hopefully, what other projects are you working on?
Yeah,
I don't want to put pressure on you.
No pressure. Trying to get back into some short stories, which are my first love. finding that I've completely forgotten even what a short story is. So that's really fun. And then just the fun part of writing a new novel, which is not writing it and just thinking about it, thinking about
Yes.
some ideas. Sitting out here in my sunroom, just trying to get into it. And again, like maybe once school starts, I'll actually start putting more words on the page.
All right. Beyonce had the album come out last week, and she was credited like 24 writers. Maybe you'll credit Brian Eno, maybe with like, you know what I mean?
He's
Some
already in the
inspiration.
acknowledgements.
Yes.
Top.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much for talking to me. It's so awesome to talk to you in your lab, so to speak, and talk about the craft and just all the cool and incredible themes and just skill shown in that book. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for your incredibly smart questions and just your absolute generosity. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate that so much. What a pleasure it's been today to speak to Rachel Yoder, and continue good luck to her with her writing. Thank you for listening to this episode. You can now subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Please leave a 5-star review. You can ask for it by name using Alexa and find it on Stitcher, Spotify, and on Amazon Music. Please follow on Instagram, where I'm at Chills at Will Podcast. That's all one word. Or on Twitter, where I'm at Chills at Will PO1. And pardon me, please share any contact info, social media info, maybe any particular place you'd like us to buy the book.
Sure. Right. I'm on Instagram at Rayjoy, RAIJOY, and on Twitter at Rachel Yoder. Buy it at bookshop.org if you can. Okay. You can also, if you want a signed copy, buy it from Prairie Lights in Iowa City, and I'll run over there and sign it for you, and they'll ship it to you.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is a passion project of mine, a DIY operation, and I'd love for your help in promoting what I'm convinced is a unique and spirited look at an often ignored art form. The intro song for the Chills Will podcast is Wind Down instrumental, and the other song played on the episode was Hoops instrumental by Matt Whitehour, and both songs are used through archesaudio.com. Please tune in for episode 137 with Jose Antonio Vargas, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Emmy-nominated filmmaker, and Tony-nominated producer. A leading voice for the human rights of immigrants, his best-selling memoir, Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen, was published by HarperCollins in 2018. His second book, White is Not a Country, will be published by Knopf in 2023, and that episode will air on August 12th. For now, thanks again for listening. I hope that these quarantine days bring you texts by writers with mad skills, like Rachel Yoder, whose works, like Nightbitch, give you chills at will.